Hello, boys and girls. My name is Miss Hamilton, and I am one of the math teachers for fourth grade. Welcome back to a great school year. Today, this recording is a targeted math mini lesson. In this math lesson, we will review expanded notation, frequency tables, and dot plots. You will need your math notebook and your pencil. So get those items ready before we begin. For our first topic, we will review expanded notation. In this lesson, we will review how to represent the value of a digit using expanded notation. This is one of your fourth grade TEK 4.2b, which states represent the value of the digit in whole numbers through 1 billion and decimals to the hundredths using expanded notation and numerals. If at any time the video is going too fast, you can always pause the video to catch up. Let's take a look at an anchor chart on expanded notation to help you remember what expanded notation involves. Expanded notation is simply a way to write numbers and digits according to their place value. It expands that number, and in expanding that number, you are stating in that statement exactly what the digit's place value is. For example, let's look at the first example there on the anchor chart, which is 2,145. Well, when this number is written in expanded notation, each digit is identified according to its place value. The digit 2 is in the thousands place. So you would write that as 2 times 1,000 plus the next digit, which is a 1. The 1 is in the hundreds place. So you would write that 1 times 100 plus the next digit, which is a 4. The 4 is in the tens place. So you would write that 4 times 10 plus the last digit, which is a 5. And the 5 is in the ones place. So you would write that as 5 times 1. All right, this should look familiar. You learn how to write expanded notation during third grade. All right, for this topic of expanded notation, we are going to work through 2 separate problems. And when you are working through these recorded lessons, you are expected to open your notebook, your math notebook, to a clean page and grab your pencil. And you are to write down each step as the problems are modeled by the teacher. This provides you with modeled problems that you can reference back to when you are practicing these types of problems. If you need more time, simply pause the video. So let's take a look at our first I do problem. It says to write the number below in expanded notation form. And you can see there that the number is a very lengthy number. It has a number of digits in it. All right, so it wants us to write this number in expanded notation, which means we are going to expand this number by identifying each digit in the number according to its place value. The first thing we want to do is to use our place value chart. You can make a place value chart at any time. You should know your place values. And as a fourth grader, you're expected to know whole numbers all the way up to 1 billion and decimals all the way to hundreds. Hundreds. All right. So the number that we're using in our example involves whole numbers only. So we're going to set up our place value chart along with, we're going to draw that out along with our number. And this is what it's going to look like. And doing this process helps you to identify your digits. Because when you're dealing with numbers that have a large number of digits in them, it is very easy to get lost in terms of the place value. So that place value chart, by sketching that out, taking the time and making that a part of your practice to chart that place value out. That will keep you from making very simple place value mistakes. All right, so we've drawn out our place value chart. We can see, according to our chart, what the place value is for each digit. Now that you have identified the place value of each digit in the number using the place value chart, you are ready to write the number in expanded notation form. And that is 8 times 1 billion plus 9 times 100 million plus 4 times 10 million plus 5 times 1 million plus 3 times 100,000 plus 2 times 10,000 plus 5 times 1,000 plus 9 times 10 plus 1. That is the expanded notation form of the number given. So think about what that number is and what each of the digits represent. Why is the hundreds place not listed in the expanded notation format? And that is because if you look at the number in the hundreds place, the digit is a 0. So the hundreds are not identified in the expanded notation form because the digit is 0. On the same page in your math notebook, we're going to work a second expanded notation problem together. So write down the number that you see on the screen. If you need more time in order to write this number down so that we can work together to write the expanded notation format of this number, make sure that you pause your video if you do need more time. The second thing we will do is to create our place value chart on top of the number that you just wrote down. For each digit, you are going to identify in the place value chart what place value that digit represents. If you'll notice, in this particular number, there is a decimal point. And to the right of the decimal point are 2 place values, tenths and hundredths. And as a fourth grader, you are expected to not only be able to recognize all, digits all the way up to billions, but also to be able to identify the place value of digits in the tenths and the hundredths place, which is to the right of the decimal point. So using the chart example that I have here on the screen, you are going to create this place value chart on top of the number that you just wrote down so that you can easily identify the place values of each of the digits in this number. Now that you've identified the place value of each one of the digits in the number, you are now ready to write the expanded notation form. All right, and when you write this down, this is what you are going to have as your answer. 4 times 1 billion, plus 8 times 10 million, plus 4 times 1 million, plus 9 times 100,000, plus 3 times 1,000, plus 7 times 100, plus 8 times 10, plus 1 times 1/10, plus 6 times 100. All right, that is the expanded notation format for this number. So let me ask you this. Why are the 100 millions, 10,000s, and ones place not listed in the expanded notation format? And if you look at your number, you can easily see that in the 100 millions, 10,000s, and ones place, there is the digit 0, which means there is no number in those particular place values. So that means that you do not have to list those place values when you are writing expanded notation format. Our next topic to review involves frequency tables and dot plots. This relates to TEKS 4.9a, which states that to represent data on a frequency table, dot plot, or stem and leaf plot marked with whole numbers and fractions. This is an anchor chart to represent a frequency table. This should look familiar and should ring a bell because you've been introduced to frequency tables in your previous math experience. And a frequency table is a way to collect and show data. And it uses tally marks. And for each of the tally marks, that represents an individual piece of data. And you can see here that on this anchor chart, the frequency table's title involves my classmates' favorite colors. So the data that is represented in this frequency chart involves the classmates' favorite colors. And you can see that the main favorite colors are red, blue, yellow, and orange. The other type of graph that we are going to be using is the dot plot. And a dot plot is a graphic display that shows dots on a linear line. And each one of those dots aligns with a particular piece of data. And you can see that this representation here of this dot plot on this anchor chart involves favorite subjects. And the favorite subjects that were asked of students were math, science, PE, history, art, reading, and music. And each time a student named one of the subjects as a favorite subject, then that is what is represented by the individual dot on this dot plot graph. Before we model our first problem, make sure that you open your math notebook to a clean page and that you grab a pencil. You are to write down each step in this model problem as I work it so that when you get ready to complete your practice problems, you have modeled examples of the type of problems that you will be working to use and reference back to. If the video is going too fast at any time, you can pause the video to catch up. All right, let's take a look at our first problem here. It says the table shows the number of pets that each student in Mrs. Brown's class owns. So take a look at the table. The table has a title that says students' pets. And you have two columns. The first column says number of pets, and the second column is entitled frequency. So, in other words, students were asked, how many pets do you have? And there were students that did not have any pets, and that is what is represented by the 0. And then they counted up how many students did not have 0 pets. So the first thing we're going to do is interpret the frequency data that is presented to us in this chart. So let's take a look at the frequency table. According to the table, the number of students that do not have any pets, 0 pets, is 5, because each one of the tally marks represents a vote. Look at how many students have 1 pet. Well, there are 3 tally marks, so that is what we're going to mark down. How many students have 2 pets? Well, according to the tally marks, there are 7. How many students have 3 pets? Well, there are 2 tally marks. How many students have 4 pets? There's only 1 student. How many students have 5 pets? There are 2 students. So we've identified our data from the frequency table. Now we're ready to move to the next part of this problem. So let's take a look at the question to find out what it wants us to do with the frequency table data. And the question says, which dot plot matches the data in the frequency table? All right, so one of these dot plot answer choices is a perfect match. So how do we check to see which answer choice is correct? Well, let's look at answer choice A. And we're going to start with that very first data point of 0 students. And when you look at that dot plot, how many dots are there for 0 students? There are 3. But according to the frequency table, how many students had 0 pets? Well, there were 5. Does that match? No. Right there, you can see that answer choice A is not the answer. Let's look at answer choice B. Let's check that very first data point of 0 students, 0 pets, and it shows that there are 5 dots. Does that match the frequency chart? Yes, it does. Look at the number of pets. 1 pet. How many students have 1 pet? Well, according to the frequency chart, there are only 3. Are there 3 dots there on the dot plot in answer choice B? Yes, there are. Let's keep going. What about for 2 pets? How many students? 7. Does that match in answer choice B? Yes, there are 7 dots. Let's keep going. What about for 3 pets? According to the frequency chart, there are 2 students. Look at the dot plot choice in letter B. How many dots are at the number 3? Well, there's only 1. Does that match the frequency chart? No, it does not. So answer choice B cannot be the answer. Let's look at answer choice C. We're going to start with the very first data point of 0 pets. How many dots are there in answer choice C? There are 1, 2, 3, 4. Does that match the data in the frequency chart? No, there's supposed to be 5. So right there from the very beginning, you can see that answer choice C is not the answer. Let's look at answer choice D. Even though this is the last one, and it would be easy to assume that this is our answer, we still check it because we could have made a mistake in reviewing the previous answer choices. You always check even the answer choice that you have determined is the correct answer. So look at the data in the dot plot and let's make sure it matches perfectly with the frequency chart. How many dots are there for 0 pets? There are 5. Does that match? Yes. How many dots are there for 1 pet? There are 3. Does that match? Yes. How many dots are there for 2 pets? There are 7. Does that match? Yes. How many dots are there for 3 pets? There are 2. Does that match? Yes. How many dots are there for 4 pets? 1. Does that match? Yes. How many dots are there for 5 pets? 2. Does that match the frequency chart data? Yes, it does. So we have confirmed that answer choice D perfectly matches the data in the frequency chart. So answer choice D is the answer. Now we're going to work our second problem. And you're going to continue to write this problem down and take notes in your math notebook, either on the same page or on a new page. Remember, you are to write down each step as we work through this problem so that you will have modeled examples when it is your turn to practice these types of problems on your own. If you need more time to write things down or take notes, you can always pause your video. Let's take a look at this table. It says the table shows the weights of the students in Mr. Smith's class. You'll notice that the table's title says students' weights, and there are 2 columns in the frequency chart. The first one says weights in pounds. The second column shows the frequency. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to identify how many students weighed each amount. All right. So let's look at our frequency table. And for each tally mark, this represents the numbers of students who weighed that particular weight. All right, so let's look at 63 pounds. How many students weighed 63 pounds? Well, according to the tally marks, there are 2. How many students weighed 64 pounds? There are 5. How many students weighed 65 pounds? There are 6. How many students weighed 66 pounds? There are 3. How many students weighed 67 pounds? There are 0. How many students weighed 68 pounds? There are 7. How many students weighed 69 pounds? There are 4. We've identified the data from our table. Now let's move on to the next step of our problem. So let's read our question so we'll know what to do with our frequency table data. Our question says, what weight in pounds is missing a data point on the dot plot? All right, you can see the dot plot there is set up. And we're looking to see which of the weights in pounds is missing a data point. All right, which does not match perfectly with the frequency chart. All right, so we start with our very first weight, which is 63 pounds. How many students weighed 63 pounds? 2. Do we have 2 dots to represent that data on the dot plot? Yes, we do. Let's move on to 64 pounds. How many students weighed 64 pounds? There were 5. Do we have 5 dots on our dot plot? Yes, we do. That matches. What about 65 pounds? There were 6 students that weighed 65 pounds. Are there 6 dots? Yes. 66 pounds. There were 3 students. Are there 3 dots? Yes. 67 pounds, there are 0 students. There are no dots there to represent that 0. That matches. What about 68 pounds? According to the frequency chart, there are 7 students. Are there 7 dots for 68? Yes, there are. So that matches. So we're down to our last data point. For 69 pounds, there were 4 students that weighed 69 pounds. How many dots are there in the dot plot? There are only 3. So we have found the data point that is missing, and that is for the 69 pounds. So we are also asked in the directions of this problem to write the answer to the question in a complete sentence. And using the RACE strategy, we take our question and we use that question to restate it in our answer. So the weight in pounds that is missing a data point is 69 pounds. Now we are down to the exit tickets for this lesson. These are to be answered and completed independently by you. In your math notebook, you are going to write down the answer for this first exit ticket question in expanded notation form. You're going to write out the complete answer choice selection. So make sure that you read the math problem to begin with. Make sure you're reading the question and you are analyzing and going through the same steps that we just did in the lesson before you make your answer choice selection. If you need more time to work this problem and answer it, you can pause your video. This is your second exit ticket for this lesson, and you are to work and complete this in your math notebook independently and on your own. Make sure that you read everything carefully on the screen and follow the same steps that we followed in this lesson before you make your answer choice selection. All right, this is the last slide in this lesson, and it does conclude this final lesson. If you need to pause this slide so that you can work on it, please do so. I hope you have a wonderful day.